Hi, this is David Pratt, the Thunderdome podcast, where we talk Virginia politics. Let's get going. Hi, Emily Satterwhite. You're with Appalachians Against Pipelines.
Appalachians Against Pipelines.
So, tell us about that organization a little bit. What does it do?
The organization is really just a name, a banner for those of us who are fighting the Mountain Valley Pipeline, especially in the Jefferson National Forest, but throughout West Virginia and Virginia. And we're working together to stand up and say the pipeline is unnecessary, it's unneeded, and it's dangerous, and it's going to ruin our water. So it's a loosely organized group of water protectors.
That's awesome. I'm big on the pipeline fight. I have a pipeline prop there, 42 inches, made out of hula hoops and black plastic. And it's a tough battle right now because we don't have the governor's support, right?
It's really disappointing to not have the governor's support, and I'm afraid that he doesn't understand how much enthusiasm he's losing on the part of potential Democratic voters and Democratic voters by not standing up for clean water in Virginia and for the health of our children and our future. He's a doctor, and he understands how toxic the chemicals are involved in fracking, and agreeing to transport those chemicals in highly compressed, basically laying bomb in our backyards is really concerning. That I'm very, very disappointed. I'm sorry I voted for him, and I'm afraid that if our Democrats don't come out strong to tell him we're losing the next generation of Democratic voters, then we're going to lose the next generation of Democratic voters, because the young people see that it seems to be only about Dominion's money and cozying up to corporations rather than protecting us.
Yes, I feel they're not doing their due diligence if they aren't talking to young voters and that whole generation. And how are they even being exposed to those views if they're not coming out and talking to us and sitting down? I mean, if the governor's getting his news through aides, they're misinforming him.
And when he was on the campaign trail, he said he was going to come and talk with us and have focus groups and do stream by stream, and he has not followed through on those campaign pledges. And you're absolutely right. A lot of our Democratic senators and delegates are getting information about the pipelines from the wrong sources right now, and they're not coming to talk to us and see the damage that's already occurred.
Right. I had never gone to Richmond until this year with Medicaid expansion, walking in those halls, but you can see how the power structures are. You have to be buzzed in, have an ID, and so the lobbyists get that access.
Right.
And the grassroots can demand it by going there and trying to get in. But it's very hard to get a meeting with the governor. I can't. So I think there's a moral obligation. You talk about as a moral compass, which I loved and I used on the Medicaid fight.
Yes.
We mailed little compasses to some of the politicians. I would ask Dr. Northam to check this moral compass. Make some time on the calendar to meet with you. Would you be willing to meet with him?
I would absolutely be willing to meet with him. He needs to go to Union Hill and talk to people in Buckingham County about the environmental racism that his own advisory committee, Environmental Justice Advisory Committee, told him this is a racist pipeline. The ACP is a racist pipeline. It's choosing to place compressor stations in, Friedman's legacy town.
He's not gone there yet.
Not that I know of. He's not been there yet, and he's not. When he came to Virginia Tech to speak at our graduation, he did not come and see those of us who were directly affected by the pipeline, and did not address the pipeline, and did not talk to anyone about our concerns about our water.
And there's a coalition around Union Hill that have done a lot of work.
Yes.
Doing their own analysis and their own surveys of residents, and I don't think they have had access either, so let's encourage that access.
Absolutely. And now that MVP has announced a Southgate extension from Franklin County through Pennsylvania County and into western North Carolina, again, the environmental justice issues are even more glaring. Obviously, the pipeline route they chose was to pick off people who were elderly or poor or unable to fight in all the counties, but especially when you get into more heavily African American counties in the southern part of that route. it's not what Virginia stands for. It's not what democratic Virginians should be.
Well, plus this whole idea of corporate eminent domain is a fairly new concept. And even Republicans, people on the right, don't like you taking the land that's been in their family for generations and cleaving it in half.
For no public necessity, no public need. They should not be allowed to use eminent domain unless there's public need. And there's been no established public need. FERC bought the hook, line, and sinker, the line from MVP that because Roanoke Gas is going to buy a little bit of the gas. But as far as I know, Roanoke Gas Company is the only Virginia destination for any of this fuel on the Mountain Valley Pipeline. It's all destined for New York City and for export to India, possibly China. So this is not, eminent domain should not be used to take people's property for corporate profit. And that's what the governor is allowing to happen.
Right. And it smells of a deal made by the last governor.
It does. It's very sad to know that we came to find out after McAuliffe left office that he had written off all liability, all anything that needs to be fixed from the mess that this pipeline's making for maybe just a few $1 million. And Roanoke City alone is going to have to spend $36 million to deal with the sediment load that's coming in from the construction of this pipeline. And so that's 4 times as much as Governor McAuliffe agreed to fix the whole state after pipeline construction.
So, yeah, and there's another pipeline, the ACP, so
yes,
there's a lot going on. And there's a China company wanting to build an enormous
petrochemical hub in West Virginia.
So it's only a bit more pressure. Oh, we need more pipelines going to that place and out of that place.
Absolutely. If people think that MVP and ACP are the last ones, they're sadly mistaken. If we're setting a precedent, if we don't fight and stop these 2 pipelines, how many more people are going to have to deal with? And so you might not think this affects you. It's not in your backyard. No one's taking your private property, but no one is safe from this use of eminent domain. If we allow them to get away with this, anybody's land is vulnerable to this kind of corporate land grab.
Right. And I've also heard the argument from the proponents of the pipeline, well, once it's in the ground, they'll forget about it and activists will go away. You won't even know it's there.
That's right. I don't know how many people saw the footage of the latest pipeline explosion. There have been 8 in Marshall County. But that pipeline had been the supposedly best-in-class Transco pipeline that was only went into service 6 months ago. But the thing that really struck me is looking at that pipeline route. Supposedly, we're not going to know it's there after it's in the ground, but this was 6 months out. And when you look at that drone footage, you can see that is still an incredibly ugly scar with no sediment and erosion control, and that there's no way that Marshall County's water quality is not affected by that in West Virginia. And that's what we're going to see in Giles County, Virginia, and Montgomery County, Virginia, and Roanoke County, Virginia, and Franklin County, Virginia. We're already seeing it. And the level of malfeasance of the contractors guarantees that any promises they've made about, oh, you won't know this is even here, it's just absolutely false. And that's one reason that Dominion and Precision Pipeline are in this lawsuit over the fact that Precision Pipeline had built a 55-mile stretch of pipeline, had 50 mudslides. Mm-hmm. And so then they said, Dominion, you didn't pay us enough. And Dominion says, well, you had the mudslides. And Precision says, well, Dominion, you didn't tell us how tough the terrain was. And that was flat terrain. We're talking about mountainous terrain with caves, sinkholes, seismic zone. If Precision and Dominion can't build 55 miles of pipe in a flat terrain, how are they going to safely build 303 miles in our Appalachian Mountains?
Right. It's just not possible.
It's not possible. The hubris of it is just incredible.
Well, the corporations have been raping West Virginia for 100 years with strip mountaintop removal and
yes.
backfilling to the streams,
yes.
which the administration just going to allow again. I mean, our environment
Absolutely.
is really under assault.
It is.
But people, I feel like not everyone is aware of it. It's almost out of sight, out of mind. It's taking
right.
place hundreds of miles away. You live
right.
in Loudoun County. It's beautiful. sunny suburban, trees and parks.
What does it have to do with me? It becomes a sacrifice zone. Appalachia has become a sacrifice zone, first with coal and now expanding into fracking and natural gas transmission.
Yes, but the whole country is our country. Virginia is our district, as we say here.
Virginia is our district.
But it's true. I mean, what can you do and I do and other groups that are fighting this battle to reach the awareness of the average person across the state?
I think that one thing that we really need to understand is that lobbyists are trying to convince our delegates and senators that Southwest Virginia wants and needs this pipeline for economic development and jobs, and that's a bold-faced lie. Southwest Virginia does not want the pipeline. No one wants the pipeline. My husband said, "What's going to happen when people start egging our house?" And I said, "No one's going to egg our house." I've never seen so much unity on any battle I've ever been involved in. No one wants this pipeline.
Right.
So why don't we want it? We don't want it because there's no economic benefit for us. 34 permanent jobs total. That's
right.
it.
So it's a falsehood to say there's a lot of jobs around this.
It's a falsehood.
And the jobs, temporary jobs, are coming from a lot of people out of state.
About 90% of the jobs are, all the license plates we see down there are Wisconsin, Oklahoma, Texas, some Kentucky, Oklahoma and Arkansas already. So the jobs are temporary jobs and they're out-of-state jobs, and they're only 34 permanent jobs. We can do better. If we can invest in renewable energy and if we can invest in energy efficiency initiatives, we can have long-term permanent jobs that are closer to home, that people won't be dragging their families all the way across the country from pipeline job to pipeline job.
Right. And if people care about climate change, people get confused. Natural gas is cleaner.
They do get confused.
It's burned and carbon dioxide ends up in the atmosphere.
And it leaks. The methane leaks from natural gas are far more potent than carbon dioxide. Mm-hmm. So we did think briefly that natural gas could be a bridge fuel, and we thought that it might be a better choice than coal. And the more we learn, the more we discover that fracked gas is a step backwards, not a step forwards. Not just because of the methane and the leaks in the transmission, but the fracking process itself is toxic. So if we're getting our milk from Pennsylvania dairies, if we're getting our livestock from these places, the fracking process is poisoning livestock and it's poisoning Americans.
Right, and when you build infrastructure like this, that's going to last 30, 40 years, you almost feel there's a pressure to use it and to not abandon it and to stick with fossil fuels for a long time, whereas governments like Germany are switching over rapidly to renewables. We've got electric cars coming with Tesla and all of that. Like, it seems almost insane to be investing in horses and buggies when
exactly
you've got solar panels.
Exactly. It is insane. And I don't know, it doesn't matter how much pressure there will be to use the infrastructure. In 30 years, there won't be gas to run through the pipelines, and there's already more pipeline than gas. I mean, we don't need the pipelines. The existing pipelines are running at like 50% capacity. The only reason these pipelines are being built is because investors are guaranteed a 14% rate of return and because Dominion wants one. Those are the only reasons. These pipelines do not help any Virginian in terms of economic benefit, in terms of health, in terms of energy, even providing energy. One of the other myths floating out there is that we almost ran out of electricity last winter. There was something about that in Hampton Roads, I believe, that because it was a particularly harsh winter, that there was the energy supply might not have quite met demand had the harsh winter gone on for a little bit longer. But that was a fluke, and in Southwest Virginia, the western part of Virginia, that has not at all been the case. We do not need, and will not get, even if we did need it, the energy produced by the fracked gas that's slated to go through these pipelines.
Right. Well, we have to keep in mind like how politics and money works. Dominion Energy doesn't necessarily make as much money through solar panels, let's say, where we don't need to be on the grid, other than that we have to be on the grid so that they don't have the incentive to push renewables because it makes less money for them. So, and they have billions of dollars to spend in the political process
Right.
to mislead our representatives, who are, a lot of them are good folks, but they're not well informed that we started talking about. That is, to me, just as important a fight to get the money out of our politics.
Get the money out of the politics, and as you're saying, make sure our elected representatives are well informed, not misinformed by people because of the influence of money.
Right. I can see coming out of this conversation that we've got to work on access.
Yes.
Better job. We cannot be like some of these good women here on the curb with signs and doing die-ins to get the attention of our representatives. They need to invite them in for coffee in their office, and then it lessens the need to be on the street.
I would love to see our candidates and elected representatives come down and let us show them what kind of job Mountain Valley Pipeline contractors are doing, the way they're destroying Virginia.
Yes, and that's a good point. Like, we had to go to Richmond. It's hard for people to get off work, drive to Richmond. They need to come out other places in the state a lot more often.
And if anyone wants to come out, Appalachians Against Pipelines can help them take a tour of the counties and see the destruction that's happening. And then they can lean on their delegates and senators themselves if they have seen it firsthand. It's not right. Back to your moral compass point, this is an injustice that Virginians are allowing to happen to Virginians.
Right. All right.
Thank you so much.